A very common type of simulation you will face in the CPA exam is the number entry simulation. In today's video, I'm going to give you my best tips to master these types of simulations. So, keep watching. Hey future CPAs, this is Ala Abudaya. I'm a licensed CPA in the state of Colorado and I help students pass the CPA exam and become CPAs. If this is your first time here and you're interested in becoming CPAs, start by subscribing to our channel and clicking the bell in order not to miss any of my videos. Task-based simulations form 50% of the CPA exam score, which means that you must do well in these questions in order to pass the CPA exam. There are actually 5 types of task-based simulations you will see on the CPA exam. The number entry simulations, the journal entry simulations, the choice list simulations, the document review simulations, and the research simulations. I will be covering each type of these simulations and how to master each one in separate videos, so stay tuned. Comment below and tell me if you find task-based simulations to be challenging and more difficult than multiple choice questions. For the business environment and concept section only, there are 3 written communication tasks which I will cover in a separate video as well. To learn my best tips and tricks to master the written communication section of the CPA exam, make sure to watch this video which I explained how to master written communications on the CPA exam. In today's video, I will specifically explain about the number entry simulations and how to master these types of simulations. I will also give you a real example of a number entry simulation from the AICPA sample tests, show you how these simulations look like and how to master these questions. So make sure to stay till the end of that video. So, what are number entry simulations? Well, number entry simulations will ask you to enter amounts as numbers into specific cells. This type of task-based simulation requires that you do some calculations and then answer with a number such as an amount of currency, a ratio, or a percentage. Your answer will automatically be formatted after you enter it. These types of simulations can be combined with choice list simulations to create a more complicated simulation that may require you to do journal entries as well. Number entry simulations appear on all 4 parts of the CPA exam. To learn more details about the 4 parts of the CPA exam and how the CPA exam structure looks like, make sure to watch these 2 videos which I explained about these things. Comment below and tell me if you faced number entry simulations when preparing for your CPA exam or not. And to learn how to apply for the CPA exam, make sure to grab my free CPA exam application cheat sheet. It's in the description below. It's totally free and it tells you how to apply for the CPA exam step by step. So make sure to grab this sheet from the description below. So how to answer number entry simulations? As I mentioned, number entry simulations do not provide you with options. These simulations will give you a scenario and request you to enter amounts into provided answer cells after performing certain calculations. Here are my 9 best tips to help you master the number entry simulations. Tip number 1. Allocate the first 1 to 2 minutes to preview the task-based simulations by clicking through the numbers under the toolbar at the top of the screen. This will give you an overview about the complexity of the question and how much time you can allocate for it. Tip number 2. Read the instructions carefully to understand what the question wants. Pay attention to instructions regarding negative numbers, rounding, or other answer treatments. Tip number 3. Read all of the exhibits and resources associated with the task-based simulations before you answer the simulation. Once you select a cell, you will be given an entry box which will automatically format your response. Tip number 4. Utilize the calculator or Excel spreadsheet and use the split screen technology function. And remember to apply what you learned. If you understand the concepts, you should do well in these simulations. To learn my best tips and tricks to pass the 4 parts of the CPA exam, make sure to watch these 4 videos which I give you my best tips and tricks to pass the FAR part of the exam, pass the audit part of the exam, pass the break part, and pass the BEC part of the exam. Tip number 5. Verify that you have entered the numbers correctly and that there is no typo error or mistake. Since the box automatically formats your answer, it may be possible for you to make a typo or other error you may not pay attention to. So, double check your answers. Tip number 6. If you don't have any idea about the answer for a specific question, make an educated guess and move on. There is no cost for incorrect answers. So, do not move on without at least putting your best guess. This can give you a point if your guess was correct, but you will not lose anything if it was incorrect. To learn my best tips to maximize your CPA exam score, watch this video. Tip number 7. Before you move on to the next simulation, make sure you have inserted an answer for all of the questions. Double check that you have officially responded to all questions and do not leave anything blank. This also applies for the multiple choice questions as well. To learn my best tips and tricks to tackle multiple choice questions, watch these 2 videos which I explained about multiple choice questions. You will know an answer has been inserted when you see a small blue box with 1, 2, 3 have faded. Tip number 8. Budget your time so you can finish all task-based simulations before time expires. I recommend allocating the time based on the complexity of the simulation. If it was a simple one, which does not combine different topics and choice lists, give it 15 to 20 minutes. Otherwise, if it was more complicated, I recommend giving it from 25 to 30 minutes to solve this simulation. Make sure you go into the exam with a plan as to how you will manage your 4-hour exam and how much time you want to leave for your simulations. Track your progress to ensure that you don't go out of time. Tip number 9. I recommend you become familiar with the layout of the task-based simulations by practicing these simulations from the AICPA sample tests, which give you real questions and real exam screens. So it will help you get familiar with how these questions look like and how to answer them. These tests can be found in the AICPA.org website. So just go to www.aicpa.org, research for sample tests, and you will get these sample tests. Most importantly, stay calm and be confident and focused while answering these questions. And remember to keep your eyes on the clock. In my opinion, if you understand the concepts and are doing good in multiple choice questions, you must do good also in task-based simulations, because these questions are simply giant multiple choice questions. Task-based simulations are basically training your brain to work on a problem in a different perspective. Okay guys, so here's an example of a numeric entry simulation, and I chose this example from the Business Environment and Concept exam from the BEC exam from the AICPA.org website. So it's a real exam, and these are the exam screens. So as you see here, the numeric entry, as I mentioned, you will enter your number, like you would do some computations and enter numbers free. You put the numbers that you come up with. So there are no options, no choices. You just do your computations and then insert the numbers you come up with. So here are the exam screens. Here is the countdown clock, which you should always keep your eye on this countdown clock. Here's a calculator you can use, of course, to compute the numbers, and Excel, a desktop Excel, which I advise you always to use because it helps a lot when doing some equations, and the cells when you want to drag them, like it speeds things up. Authoritative literature. You can here's the authoritative literature. I always don't recommend using the authoritative literature for non-research task-based simulations because it will waste your time unless you really need it, and unless you are really like stuck and need to search for something quickly. So you should use it when you need it, really. But I don't advise you to use it like to rely on it always. And then here's an overview and the help button. And here you will find here the numbers here. These numbers you can go like backwards and forwards, so you can see the next question, okay, and the previous question as well, okay. And here are the arrows to the same thing, and here the arrows the same thing. When you click on the arrow here or there, it takes you backwards and forwards to see the next question or the previous question within the testlet. As you all know, guys, once you finish the testlet and submit it, you can't go back to this testlet and see its questions. And at the same time, once you are in a testlet, you can't see the questions in the next testlet. What you can do only is go backward and forward in the same testlet and see the questions in the same testlet you are in. And here's the flag button. Any question you face, any difficulties, and you can flag the question and it will be red, flagged red, and you can come back and review it after that. Here are the exhibits. Also, you always should keep your eye on the exhibits and pay attention to them and review them all because they include important information that you will need to solve the question. Okay, so here's the question. Let's quickly answer this question. As I said, it's from the BEC exam, and what I find here is that this question is talking about variances. And let me say here that variances are one of the most tested topics on the task-based simulations in the BEC exam. Like, expect to receive at least one task-based simulation on variances. So that's why I advise you guys to study variances properly and solve on it multiple choice questions and task-based simulations. Let's begin now reading. So the first thing always, guys, before I begin with the question, I want to tell you a great advice. Once you reach the task-based simulations, the first thing I advise you to do always in the testlet is to scan the testlet quickly. Go to the next, see all the questions in the testlet, scan the questions, and see which questions you find are easier for you and the topics that you are better in, and begin with those ones, the ones that are more easier for you and the ones that can give you points, because our goal is to get as much points as we can. Okay, so always scan the testlet and start with the easy questions that you feel you are better in and that can give you points. If you find any research questions in the testlet, I advise you always to leave the research till the end. So solve the other questions and then come back to the research, because sometimes it takes more time than expected, and you get stuck in these questions sometimes. So I don't want these research questions to make you lose time. Okay. So once you reach the question and you decide which question you want to begin with, you must read the instructions carefully. Read what the question wants and understand what the question wants carefully. You'll need to read the question more than once, maybe twice, to understand what it wants, right? That's very important. In order to answer the question correctly, read the instructions correctly. So let's begin reading the question here. A manufacturing company is reviewing its results for the quarter ended June 30, year 4. The company uses standard costs based on past performance and expectations for each quarter to monitor performance and analyze variances. At the end of each quarter, variances are identified and investigated further. For each of the variances in column A, complete the following using the information provided in the exhibits above. So here we have column A, and they will give us some variances. So for example, here selling price variance, sales volume variance, and they want us to complete the required information for each variance. So what are they saying here exactly? In column B, calculate the amount of the variance for the quarter ended June 30, year 4. So in column B here, we should calculate the amount of the variance, okay, and then put the number in column B for this variance that they are asking about. Pay attention. They are saying here, enter all amounts as positive whole numbers. So they're telling us here to enter all the amounts as positive numbers, regardless of if they were like negative or positive, or if they were favorable or unfavorable. They want us to insert all numbers as positive values. So that's very important. As I said, read the question carefully, read the instructions carefully, because here they tell you exactly what they want from you. Any misunderstanding will cause you to lose points, okay? In column C, select whether the variance calculated in column B is favorable or unfavorable. So here in column C, as you see, it's a choice list cell because they gave you here two choices, favorable or unfavorable, and you should choose one based on on the computations you come up with. You should determine if it was favorable or unfavorable. Okay, so here you're going to enter the amounts in cell B and enter if it's favorable or not in cell C. Okay, so let's start with the first one here, selling price variance. So here they want us to find the selling price variance. The selling price variance usually equals the actual selling price. Okay, so you take the actual selling price per unit minus the budgeted selling price per unit, and then time that by the quantity of units sold, by the actual quantity of units sold. So this is the selling price variance from its name. Always, guys, try to tie the variance name with the equation, with its solution. So from its name, selling price variance, that means that you must take the difference in the price between the actual and the budgeted price times the actual quantity sold. Okay, and so here we're gonna look for the price. Where can we find actual price and budgeted price? We're gonna go to the exhibits, right? So that's why you should always review all the exhibits and pay attention to these exhibits. So here let's take this exhibit, standard versus actual costs, and see what information are in this exhibit. So a standard versus actual cost, it has here standard amount versus actual amount for the direct labor hours, for the labor rate per hour, for the units of materials, for the price per unit of the material, for variable overhead, and for the fixed overhead. Okay, so this is the information in this exhibit. And the second exhibit here, we have, it's called here other information. So we should open it and read the information provided in it as well. And I advise you guys to use this workspace. There's a lot of workspace here. The examiners put it for purpose for you to put your exhibits and open the split screens. I always advise you to use the split screens where you can put the exhibits in this workspace and open more than exhibit at the same time, and at the same time see the question so you can see both sides together. Okay, so the other information here says that actual units produced and sold for the quarter were 9,500 with a profit per unit of 5.88, and they here also tell us the budgeted. So the budgeted was 10,000 and the actual was 9,500, and the profit per unit was 5.88 and the budgeted was 4.6. Each unit was sold for $21 with a budgeted selling price of $20. So here they give us a budgeted selling price, which we will need it to answer this question. And here's the actual also selling price, which we will also need to answer this question. The actual contribution per unit for the quarter was 7.48. The budgeted contribution margin per unit for the quarter was 6.1. Assume that the contribution margin is equivalent to operating margin. Standard direct labor hours and units of materials used in manufacturing have been adjusted for actual production. So read the exhibits always, open them in the workspace area and keep them in front of your eyes when you solve the question. It will make it much more easier for you to solve the question. So here from this exhibit, we find all the data that we need to solve this variance, which is the selling price variance. So here we have the actual selling price of $21, okay, because here they told us each unit was sold for $21, and here's the budgeted selling price of $20 they told us here. So the difference in the price, we can take it easily, and we want to time that by the number of units sold, which already they gave us here. They told us actual units produced and sold for the quarter were $9,500. So actual selling price $21 minus $20, the budgeted selling price, equals 1 times $9,500 equals 1 times 9,500 units sold, actual units sold. This will give us a selling price variance of $9,500. Okay, so here we just come here to the amount and click here the cell and just enter the amount $9,500 and just put accept. And as you see, the cell automatically formats the amount and puts the commas and even rounds it and everything. And here, concerning the cell number C, we should here determine if it was favorable or unfavorable variance. And here the answer is favorable, absolutely favorable. Why? Because simply the actual price was more than the budgeted price, which is for our benefit, which is what we want. We want our prices to be more, and we want more profit, and we want to sell, to make more profits and sell in higher prices, right? So absolutely, it's a favorable variance because the selling price variance is because the actual selling price per unit is higher than the budgeted selling price per unit. Let's go to the next variance here. Sales volume variance for operating income. So we want to see here this sales volume variance for operating income. The same thing from its name, sales volume variance. So we're going to here need to use the volume, right? So the sales volume variance equals the actual quantity of units sold minus the budgeted quantity times the budgeted contribution margin per unit. Okay, so the contribution margin per unit, for those who don't know the contribution margin per unit, it's when you take it's the what's left for the fixed costs. So when you take all the revenues minus the variable costs, what's remaining, we call it the contribution margin per unit. So here the sales volume variance for operating income, we take the differences in the between the actual quantity sold and the budgeted quantity times the budgeted contribution margin per unit. And here in this exhibit also we have here we have the actual quantities sold. Here it says actual units produced and sold $9,500 and the budgeted 10,000, and the contribution margin per unit, it says here the budgeted contribution margin per unit for the quarter is 6.1. Okay, so all the data is available. We just do our computations. So 9,500 minus $10,000 will give us 500 times 6.1, which is the budgeted contribution margin per unit, will give us 3,050. So so this variance, so the sales volume variance is 3,050. Just enter it here in the cell, click the cell, put the amount, and accept, and the cell will format it automatically. Was it favorable or unfavorable? Of course, it was unfortunately unfavorable because simply the actual units sold were less than the budgeted. So we budgeted something and we sold less, which it's unfavorable for us. We want to sell more, not less. Okay, let's go to the next. So here we just enter unfavorable, choose unfavorable from the option list. Just choose it and put accept. Let's see the next question now here. Direct labor rate variance. From its name, again, the direct labor rate variance equals the actual direct labor rate per hour minus the standard direct rate per hour, okay, times the actual direct labor hours. So we're going to take the difference in the actual direct labor rates between the actual and standard hourly direct labor rates and time that by the actual direct labor hours. So let's look for these information, try to find them from here. We're gonna go to the other exhibit, which is the standard versus actual costs. And here you're gonna find, guys, that we have already, it's straightforward. They give us here the standard amount and the actual. So here's the direct labor hours. They gave us here the standard hours and the actual hours, and they give us here the labor rate per hour. So that's what we want here, the direct labor per hour. They give us the standard and the actual. So the difference between the actual direct labor rate per hour minus the standard times the actual direct labor hours, which are here $8,000. So 10.5 minus 10 times 8,000, this will give us $4,000 direct labor rate variance. So just here enter, click the cell and just put 4,000 and accept. And as I said, the cell will automatically format this number. And then was it favorable or unfavorable? It was unfavorable. Why? Because the actual direct labor rate per hour was higher than the standard, which is more cost on us. So it's unfavorable actually. The next question says direct labor efficiency variance. So the direct labor efficiency variance, from its name, it's talking about efficiency. So we're talking here about hours. were we the difference in hours, were we efficient or not, right? So the direct labor efficiency variance equals the direct actual labor hours minus the standard actual labor hours. So we take the labor hours, the difference in labor hours between the actual and standard, and time that by the standard direct labor rate. So already we have here in this exhibit, it tells us the hours here, how many hours we have here. Standard 10,000 hours and the actual 8,000. The difference between both $2,000 times the standard labor rate per hour, which is 10. So this will give us $20,000. So here we're gonna put $20,000 as the direct labor efficiency variance in the amount. And was it favorable or unfavorable? It was favorable, yes, because why was it favorable? Because the actual direct labor hours were below the standard direct labor hours. So we worked less hours than budgeted. We were able to finish the work in less hours. So it's favorable for sure. Okay, guys, so always guys use the logic when you solve the questions. And like, I don't find anything difficult. From its name, you can discover how you can compute the variance, and favorable or unfavorable, it's by logic, okay? The next question here is materials price variance. Materials price variance here from its name again. So we're gonna take here the difference in the materials, in the actual material price. We're gonna take the material price, the difference between the actual material price and the standard material price, and time that by the actual units sold. And we can get this information also from this exhibit. Here we have the material price. They give us the standard and the actual 5.25, and the standard is 4. So the difference between both times the actual number of materials sold, which is 4,000 units here, the actual amount. So we just time 1.25 times 4,000, and that will give us the material price variance of $5,000. And was it favorable or not? No, it was unfavorable. Why? Because the actual material price was higher than the standard material price. So we just insert here the number, the answer, which is $5,000, and we choose from the list here unfavorable. Next question here says material usage variance. Again, from its name, we're gonna take here the units of materials sold. So we're going to take the difference between the actual units sold minus the standard units of materials sold, and time that by the standard material price, okay, per unit, the standard material price per unit. So we're going to look here for the actual and the standard materials sold from the exhibit. Here is the units of materials sold. Here's the actual 4,000 and the standard 4,750. So the difference between both is 750, and we're going to time that by the standard material price per unit, which is $4 here. So here, when we see here the standard amount, the standard price per unit of material is $4. So 750 times $4, this will give us $3,000. And was it favorable or unfavorable? Yes, it was favorable because the actual units of material used was less than the standard, which is better. Okay, so we could just come here to the cells, put here 3,000 in this cell here, click the cell and put 3,000, and it will be formatted automatically. And here we're gonna choose favorable, and that's it for this question. The next one, variable overhead spending variance. Variable overhead spending variance. So what does the variable overhead spending variance equal? It equals the difference in the overhead, the difference between the variable overhead, between the actual variable overhead expenditure and the standard variable overhead expenditure. Okay, now the actual variable overhead expenditure, we're going to try to find it here. Let's see, here's the variable overhead, and they gave us the actual overhead, which is 23,440. Okay, this is the actual variable overhead expenditure, and we want here the standard variable overhead. Actually, they did not give us here the amount of the standard variable overhead expenditure. So what we should do is we should compute it, right? We should compute this amount on our own. We should come up with this amount. So what is a standard variable overhead equals? The standard variable overhead equals the actual direct labor hours times the standard variable overhead rate per direct labor hours. And we have already the actual direct labor hours, which are here $8,000, and we're going to time them by the standard variable overhead rate per labor hour, which is $2. So this will give us $16,000 of standard variable overhead expenditure minus the actual variable overhead expenditure of $23,440, and this will give us $7,440 of the variable overhead spending variance. So we're gonna just enter here in the amount $7,440. And was it favorable or unfavorable? No, it was unfavorable. Why? Because the actual variable overhead costs were higher than the standard variable overhead costs. So we're just gonna here choose unfavorable, and this is how we answer this question. So this is an example of a numeric entry simulation. It actually includes both numeric entry and choice list simulations from the BEC part of the exam. And you guys always keep your eye on the clock. I think a question like this, maybe you'll need like 25 minutes to solve it because it includes some computations. So most importantly, guys, apply what you learned. So these are my best tips to help you master these questions and beat them during the CPA exam. Comment below and tell me if you are going to implement these tips during preparing for the CPA exam and during the exam as well. And make sure to grab my CPA exam cheat sheet. Application cheat sheet is in the description below. So make sure to grab your free CPA exam cheat sheet from the description below. Remember, go after what you want. Pass the CPA exam because you can become CPAs and save the world.